Thank you very much, Pete. Great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very... Oh, don't laugh. Don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank. There goes your future.
Well, Lawrence, my first reaction is there's no precedent for anything like this after 9/11, other times in our country's history when there were even major events. A president or a SecDef didn't call all the admirals and generals to a meeting in an auditorium. These are incredibly professional individuals, these admirals and generals that were in that room today. And this was certainly a new experience for them. And, to see, firsthand, I think some of the, things that they have heard or seen on TV from a president, I imagine was rather concerning. I haven't spoken to many of them, but I did have one conversation with one general today, and there was a lot of head nodding. Often there are other people in the room. But I imagine that a meeting like this was very concerning for the men and women that run our military.
Did you see any military reason for that meeting today?
I mean, Pete Hegseth, who has no business being in this job, he plugged his book. I mean, that's a personal reason. Donald Trump showed up at the end of the meeting. I mean, he obviously wanted to address this group personally and share his thoughts, many of which were incoherent. The stuff that Pete Hegseth spoke about, the parts of the speech I saw, which was, the beginning portion of the speech where he called admirals and generals fat, talked about how often they need to exercise, talked about wokeness and warrior ethos. By the way, Lawrence, and for your entire audience, we have the most effective and lethal fighting force that this planet has ever seen. And if you want to continue that, what you can't do is be spending time making soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines march in parades or pick up garbage in the streets of Washington, D.C. and other cities, or show up at meetings like this one that have no military purpose at all. I think the Secretary of Defense was trying to just show his ability to summon people. I think it makes him feel better about his position and his job. And I think history will look back at this as a real event, and it's not going to be looked upon fondly.
If you had been sitting there as a military commander, what would you be thinking tonight? I mean, these are the people who, through that chain of command, Donald Trump to Hegseth, that's where your orders could come from someday.
Yeah, they go directly from the commander-in-chief to the Secretary of Defense. They bypass the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. That is the chain of command to the combatant commanders. I would be really concerned. You mentioned them laughing. I mean, it's not too hard to figure out, Lawrence. Were they laughing with him or at him? And the silence in the room at the beginning of that speech was deafening. You don't see that, and but I also think it shows and it demonstrates the silence at the beginning of that meeting when the president came on stage shows the professionalism and the non-political nature of the United States military. They don't want to be part of this. That's why they didn't say anything. It's hard for some of them to hold the laughter when you have a president that at times, I think it's fair to say, was incoherent. Mm-hmm. But we have an incredibly professional military. And I hope the American people take, some comfort in knowing that most of those people in the room are not signing up for the political nature of the military that both the Secretary of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief want. I have a lot of confidence in those men and women in the room. I know many of them. They do not want to be a part of this. And, some of them are going to be challenged here. I hope not, but I think over the next 3.5 years are going to be challenged in, how do they push back? How do they speak truth to power in an unprecedented time?
There is something genuinely wrong with this man, and the 25th Amendment ought to be invoked.
I sat through Donald Trump's entire speech to the generals, so you don't have to, and these are my takeaways of what I can only describe as a poison shit word salad sandwich because of the amount of dangerous, detestable crap that came out of his mouth that sounded really more like the ramblings of a lunatic. He starts off addressing this room full of generals by saying, "I built the military." Then he calls them central cast members and says, "We won every war, World War I, World War II, everything after, everything before, and then we went woke and changed it from the Department of War to the Department of Defense, and we're going to fix that." Keep in mind that some of the worst things that he's saying on this list are the most flippant and offhand. Like, he doesn't want us to notice or even catch that he might have said it or notice that it was even important in the first place. We are awakening the warrior spirit that built this nation, taming the Great Plains. He says there's record recruitment in the military now that he's president. It will be a big insult to the country if I don't get the Nobel Prize. They'll pay in hell if they don't sign for it. He rambles about merit. People had jobs that weren't qualified. Now that has changed. We got away from merit for a long time. Now we aren't politically correct anymore. This country was set up for political correctness, but you never can be great like that. We will not be politically correct when it comes to defending this country. In the big announcement, $1 trillion in 2026 on the military invested, followed by dead silence in the crowd. I hope you love it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you love it. That's a lot of money. Dead silent.
Well, we've seen Pete Hegseth's speech to the military leadership, and it was everything I feared it would be. So, Texas Paul, hope your coffee's as good as mine. Hell, I hope it's better. Again, don't panic. I'm not panicked. You don't panic. What he said was exactly what I feared, that we would be now having a white nationalist and misogynist agenda in our military, and that they would be culling senior leadership. Pete Hegseth didn't say they would be culling senior leadership. He said they could resign if they want to, but Donald Trump, who has no control anymore due to his mental decline, he said the quiet part out loud on his way to the meeting. He said he would be meeting with generals and firing the ones he doesn't like. So, yeah.
Congressman Pat Ryan here. I don't do a lot of these videos, but given what was said and done this morning by President Trump, I have to speak out. First off, gathering our national security leaders, our generals from around the world, taking them from their critical missions, in and of itself is wrong and unprecedented. And then to bring them all in a room in an overtly political way and double down on deploying our U.S. troops against U.S. citizens in American cities is as un-American, unconstitutional, and unpatriotic as I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I think in our country's history. To use language like calling our American cities, including New York, training grounds for U.S. troops, to talk about this as a war from within is just absolutely outrageous and totally unacceptable. And for any and every American out there who is a freedom-loving patriot, we all need to speak up on this. This has to be a red line, and I'm confident, knowing the American people, that they see it as such, but we need leaders from all the political spectrum to speak out and call on us to do better. So that's the call I'm putting out today to all of my colleagues.
You know, I hear the Democrats are going to be blamed and the Republicans are going to be blamed. I actually think the president would be blamed. If there is a shutdown, and it's not going to be a horrible shutdown because, as you know, things will sort of keep
Well, there's a partial shutdown, right?
If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the president of the United States.
You know, the interesting thing is in 25 years and 50 years and 100 years from now, when the government is, you know, when they talk about the government shutdown, they're going to be talking about the president of the United States. Who was the president at that time? Mm-hmm. They're not going to be talking who the head of the House was, the head of the Senate, who's running things in Washington. They're going to be talking about during the Obama administration. Sure. It was a disaster. So guys like Boehner, who is in there working hard, and he's got one of the truly hard jobs of the world. They're not going to be really discussing him. They're going to be discussing one person. So I really think the pressure is on the president, personally, in terms of his own history.
The next time you have something to say about me, don't cop out through a racist and fake AI video. When I'm back in the Oval Office, say it to my face. Say it to my face.
Forceful response there from Jeffries, what many in his caucus wanted to see from him. You asked about vote cadence, Anna. We do expect that we're going to see the Senate vote at some point later today on the House-passed CR. That's expected to fail because they don't have the Democratic votes that they need, which leaves us in this stalemate.
You do want to provide health care to illegal immigrants that are here right now.
That's a Republican talking point, and it's shameful that you would continue. Of course not. I just said repeatedly that it is not. And we made that clear in the Oval Office to President Trump and to Republican leaders. We've made that clear repeatedly. It's a Republican talking point. In fact, I'm being gentle. It's a lie. We are fighting for the health care of the American people. And what we need to do is to address the Republican health care crisis.
We are ready, as Democrats, to keep the government open and to save your health care. But where in the world are our Republican colleagues? There's more mentions of Donald Trump in the Epstein files than there are House Republicans here in Washington, D.C. today.
Here in D.C., we just finished a press conference with all the House Democrats. We are here in Washington, D.C., at the Capitol right now, ready to work to keep the government open. But guess where the Republicans are? The Republicans in Congress are not in Congress. They're on vacation right now. We're literally the only ones here. And it just goes to show that they have, number one, put us in a healthcare crisis. They want to go into a shutdown so that way they can take away healthcare from more people. We're here to say we want to keep the government open. We're not going to vote for a bill that's going to rip away healthcare from people. Get over here and let's work to make sure that this doesn't happen. But they're nowhere to be found. They're on vacation. And you can visually see the fact that all the Democrats are here, but none of the Republicans are here. So call your representative and tell them to get to work.
What Republicans want is to pass what is called a clean CR. In other words, maintaining the status quo. And some of you may say, well, what's the problem? It's not bad. It's not good. We'll maintain the status quo. Here's why that is an awful idea and why all of us are opposed to that. In the last year, as many of you know, under Trump's big, beautiful bill, which to my mind was one of the worst pieces of legislation passed in modern history, under that bill, 15 million people on Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act will be thrown off of health care. A number of studies out there have suggested that up to 50,000 Americans a year will die because they are no longer able to go to the doctor. Very shortly, you are going to be receiving notices from your insurance companies that your rates, your insurance premiums, are going up by, on average, some more, some less, 75%. Yeah, you heard that correctly, 75%. Now, right now, we have a broken healthcare system. Nobody can afford healthcare. You're ready for a 75% increase in your insurance premiums. You're not. Nobody is. On top of all of that, you got a HHS, Health and Human Services Secretary now, who's trying to undermine vaccine protocol. One of the great developments in modern science, keeping our kids healthy.
Breaking news, over 100,000 federal employees are set to resign from their positions tomorrow. This is set to be the largest mass resignation in U.S. history. There are 4 primary reasons that they cite for wanting to resign from their positions with the government. The first is increased political pressure under the current Trump administration. Second is the fear of retribution. They are terrified that if they speak out, they will lose their position anyway. The third is job security concerns under the Trump administration with a lack of federal funding given to many different positions. And number 4, a general unrest and dissatisfaction with their positions currently. Multiple agency insiders have said that they felt under siege and that there are constant loyalty tests to prove their allegiance to Trump. There have allegedly been internal memos tied to the screening of political ideology and reported threats of mass firings tied to being a leftist. Labor unions representing these workers have warned about increased surveillance, especially when it comes to education, the EPA, and the Justice Department. These employees do resign, this would be a massive fuck you to the Trump administration. It would also mean massive delays for the average person when it comes to things like Social Security.
Fascism is a political system built on control, fear, and loyalty to a strong leader. Fascism attacks democracy. Democracy is a system where people have the power to make decisions about their government, usually by voting, speaking freely, and holding leaders accountable. Are we following so far? Okay, so how fascism builds control, fear, and loyalty to a leader is by silencing opposition, blaming society's problems on outsiders, and using force to hold on to power. It doesn't want a debate. It doesn't want obedience. It wants a leader to grab power by convincing people that their country is under attack, that certain groups are the enemy, that opposition voices need to be immediately silenced, and that only he can save everyone. Starting to sound familiar? If opposing fascism sounds controversial to you, that tells you everything you need to know about what's really happening here. The modern Antifa movement traces back to Germany and Italian leftist groups that fought fascist gangs after World War I. But today's version is a broad, loosely affiliated coalition of left-wing activists with no official leader, no membership, no leaders at all, no central base of operation.
I'm never going to do anything to hurt our farmers.
Farmers across the country are starting to harvest soybeans as we speak, and right now 25% of our market is completely missing.
10 to 20% tariffs, 50 to 200% tariffs.
That is a 5-alarm fire for our industry.
I've never seen anything like this, and it's all due to the president's tariffs.
1,000%.
He's mentioned many times that he loves farmers. Right now we need to see swift action, or we're going to lose a lot of these farmers that the president loves.
I love tariffs.
He is not helping the farmer.
In New York City, the Trump immigration agent who last week was filmed doing this to a crying mother in front of her kids and in front of a hallway full of reporters and witnesses. This Trump agent initially was taken off the job. There was a statement from the Department of Homeland Security about his supposedly unacceptable behavior in throwing this woman to the ground the way that he did. But he was reportedly back on the job in New York City. In Hyattsville, Maryland, a few days ago, another of Trump's immigration agents fumbled his gun, dropped it, dove for it, dropped it again, momentarily lost track of it, and then grabbed it and pointed it at passersby. Apparently more out of embarrassment than anything else, he then seems to have quite belatedly realized that maybe he should not just be aiming this gun at people's heads, and then after a few moments, he eventually drops it and starts pointing it down on the ground instead. You okay, big guy? You ever done this before? This weekend in Chicago, these Trump immigration officers decided that they did not like a guy on a bike who appears to have said something derogatory about President Trump. And so then they all set off like a kindergarten soccer team, chasing and chasing and chasing to try to get him while he rode away on his bike. Benny Hill music is optional there, but there they all go. Sure. What's the national security objective here, guys?
We don't take an oath to a country. We don't take an oath to a tribe. We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution, and we take an oath to the idea that is America, and we're willing to die to protect it.
It's time for the Trucker John Livestream. Gonna be a good time, oh yeah. The Trucker John Livestream. Come along for a good time. It's a good time, good time, good time, good time. Trucker John Livestream. It's gonna be a good time. The time of your life. Gonna talk some shit. Hush your mouth. Gonna talk a little smack. Gonna talk whatever comes of it. You're gonna always wanna come back. Well, yeah, it's the Trucker John Livestream. He's the biggest, baddest, funniest mother you've ever seen. Watch your mouth, he's headed south. Not even sure what that means, but if it's one thing I know, the Trucker John Livestream is the best thing you've ever seen.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. Trucker John.